Okay, so we were discussing about three different kinds of perspectives available. Today's session is all about that, perspectives. So when I'm talking about perspectives, there is 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, and 0th point. Now, among that, as like, in short, in 1 or 2 lines, if I have to tell, then 4th point, 0th point is again something I'll not go in depth about it today's class, and it's not required for your exam as well. 4th point perspective is another dimension that we are talking about. So in 3 point perspective, once you are making it, you have a height, you have in this particular diagram, you have a height, you have a length, you have a width, and several different things. Now in the 4 point perspectives, there is something like this as well. There will be grids like this, running like, in a spherical manner, and there will be things like this. So this tries to show you a bulge in that object, a width, a depth attached to it, and that is what I'm talking about over here in 4th point perspective. Now again, not going in much detail because exam doesn't tell us, or for exam, we do not need that. I do not specifically talking about, I don't want to be that exam subjective, but yeah, we have our exam on our head knocking at our door, so we cannot be also like, it cannot be a philosophy class where we go in depth and discuss hours and hours on something else. So let's talk about now three important things wherein or which is going to come for our exam. 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective, which are actually important for your exam and which are required, like, for your this NATA entrance examination. So if I have to tell you about all the three different kinds of perspectives that are available, first is 1 point. So what happens in 1 point is, okay, are you able to see this 1 point in a proper manner? Like, is it written as 1 point, it's only to you, or it's a mirror image? Students, am I audible?
Sir, it is properly seen.
It's properly seen, right? Okay, because in my camera, like on my screen, I can see it as a mirror image. Anyways, no problem. So 1 point, now in 1 point perspective, what happens is drawings will all be the same in another way around. So there are a few basic things which we need to understand. Any drawing, anything that you make, they always have a central line or an axis running through it. So this is known as line of horizon. So like this is known as the line of horizon. Now, this line of horizon is what? Nothing but a center axis upon which we construct our composition or so. In 1 point, so these perspectives are defined as 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point. How? Depending upon their necessity of vanishing points. What is a vanishing point? A vanishing point is a point wherein, like when you make these perspectives, they seem to be emerging. If it's 1 point, then it's one very particular point from where the whole perspective will emerge. If it's 2 point, then it's 2 points from where it will emerge, and there will be 2 dimension attached to it. So now in the same way, considering it as a 1 point perspective, this is your vanishing point, which is known as V1, and from here your whole composition will emerge. So anything you make in the composition, this is just the start. Let's say this is your house. This is, or like, let's say this is a road wherein you're walking through, and like, you're checking out. So these are just two buildings. You want to attach a height to the next building, you can do it, but all has to come to this point. Okay, understand this very simple aspect. Everything has to start from this very particular point. So any building, any construction, let's say now on the road, you want to make this railings, or this, like, railings to this footwalk. So they also have to go in the height, the top portion of all this, like, vertical one also has to go and meet at this one very particular point. As simple as that. This is 1 point perspective. Okay, I'm not detailing you much. You guys are already aware about it. Just making it more clear and more conceptual. So this is 1 point perspective. Then what is 2 point perspective? 2 point perspective is, again, we have our vanishing lines and there are 2 points attached to it. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me just adjust the light because I guess it's a reflection that you are getting on screen. Okay, I hope now the board is comparatively much better. Okay. So let's try to understand this 2-point perspective real quick. So what is 2-point perspective? Again, pretty much simple. Nothing hard to understand or so. So 2-point perspective is nothing but you have your baseline over here, line of horizon, and there are two vanishing points, V1, V2. Clear? Now there's a center point as well upon which your construction, not a center point really, this is the point at the junction from which you your the central axis will be running for that particular construction or whatever so you're making. So let's say this is your structure out. Okay, there's a slight mistake, sorry. So let's say this is your house. There are guidelines. This is your basic house, okay. Now on top of this, you're adding few stories or so. You want to attach a balcony. Again, now the thing is, you want to attach a wall. So this is what 2-point perspective is. Now there are two dimensions attached to it, and most importantly, this is what to be noticed. Two vanishing points. Clear? Any doubts in this? Any doubts in 2-point?
No, sir.
Now let's quickly jump on to 3-point. What is 3-point? These are very simple things, nothing complex. I really don't understand why some people they make it so complex to understand. They talk about so much theory and all this stuff. 3-point is again now. So if 1 point is 1 dimension and 1 vanishing point, 2-point is 2 dimension, 2 vanishing point. 3-point will be 3 dimensions and 3 vanishing point. 3-point perspective is again pretty much simple. Let's say now in 3-point perspective, there are two ways you can view an object. Okay. One is from the ground level, ground zero. So in that, how things will look is, let's say this is a skyscraper which you are having. So how will you really see? Let's first try to understand or draw that. Just a sec. Okay. So this is how your construction is going to look from ground zero. Now then where are the points? When you are viewing it from the ground, this is where your V1 and V2 lies, and these two lines which are going, they meet somewhere over here. Okay. Now the drawing is not perfect, but I'm just showing what actually is happening. Somewhere over here, that is known as your V3. So there are 3 vanishing points. Now if you look the same thing the other way around, that is the top, let's say you're a flying bird or from an airplane. Airplane again things will be pretty much smaller, so it won't be that definitive. Now let's say you're flying on sky and you look at that very particular building. So this is how it's going to look. What happens over here is your V1, your V2, and your V3 is somewhere joining over here at an infinite. So these are all imaginary points, okay? So the construction of the work should show things like this. So this is your 3-point perspective. Now compositions with these things, they have to be understood in detail. That we will not discuss it over here, and if you students who are watching this in form of a recorded class, if you have any doubts with all of these 3 and how to compose it, how to put all these things in a composition, reach us out and we will discuss all these things in detail for you if you have any doubts for the same. Okay, so these are the 3 different kinds of perspectives that are available and that is required for your entrance exam of NATA 2024. Or anyways, it's required for any of the NATA exams that you give or anywhere there is a syllabus or perspectives. Okay, now this is one part of it. This is what we have discussed about perspective. Now, when we are talking about 1-point, 2-point or 3-point perspectives, we also need to understand a very simple concept or a very simple thing, which I must tell you guys now, that every perspective which is ahead of the other one, that is a 2-point ahead of the 1 point and a 3-point ahead of 2-point and a 4-point ahead of this 3-point, everything comes from or begins from the earlier one. or its predecessor. So 1 point perspective is required for you to compose a 2 point. Sorry, 2 point is required for you to compose a 3 point, and 3 point is required to compose a fourth point. It goes like this. Now, you might be asking, sir, how come a 1 point is there in a 2 point perspective? Because in 2 point, it's kind of quite different. Like, we are not really composing something or a full composition. Let's say if we have to compose, how is it coming? So let's consider something and let's try to understand that in detail in form of a composition. How is it coming up? Okay. So let's say you are in a junction or you are in your locality and there are houses and all. So just understand this full composition first. Okay. So let's say these are now just skeleton structures that I am drawing or doing. So considering all the factors and all, right now, tell me, is at 1 point perspective, the starting point for 2 point, and most importantly, the other aspect is, can a 1 point perspective be included in a 2 point? Yes or no? In this composition I'm talking about, definitely.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Can the vice versa happen, Sarah?
No, sir.
Absolutely. Because whenever we are composing a full composition within a very particular perspective, the other way around cannot happen. Because let's say, if uh what should I tell? Let's say in a human being is formed of an cells, embryo and all, and finally it grows, and after that you are given birth, and then things develop. So that embryo or those cells are definitely inside you, but inside that you are you cannot be inside that very particular thing, right? So vice versa is not possible over here. Just this is just for your understanding and just for a pretty much definitive understanding of the same, that how in composing a composition can both the things be included, but not to make a mistakes which usually is made by students. Any doubts, anything yet which you have in mind, please tell. Yes, no.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, fine, guys. For students watching this class in form of a recording,
Sir, can you show 2 point in 3 point perspective?
2 point and 3 point perspective, absolutely, we will work in that. Now, see, there is a certain thing which we need to understand. 2 point and 3 point, when you are talking about, there is an aspect that we need to understand about it. So you might be asking, sir, what aspect? 2 point and 3 point perspective gives us a point of error, or there is a slight chance of error that will always be there. Can you tell me why? Any ideas why I am talking about the scope of error in while including 2 point in a 3 point perspective? Any idea? I want to hear from you guys. I can obviously tell but it will be a monotonous session.
No, sir.
No. Okay, fine. No is accepted. I will tell you why is it. See, when you are looking at a building from the top, let's say a 2 point perspective is what you are talking about. Uh, what happens in a 2-point perspective basically, and why do we need 1 point, 2 point, 3 point? Now let's say when we are looking from the sky at these buildings, anything that is of a great height, as in a skyscraper, as in a tall building, will come in 3 point. There is no scope of attaching 2 point until and unless you have a building flying in the sky, right? So now what happens is any building which is of a smaller size, which is not like, of that huge size or so, that can be considered as a 2-point perspective, removing the scope of error, or sorry, considering the scope of error, that as like, let's say, okay, let me erase this and show you on board, so that will be a better understanding of explanation. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So let's say you are watching from top, okay, of the sky. And this is what your building looks like. And there is a smaller building. Now this can be considered as a 2-point, okay, considering that there is a scope of error. And what error is it? That though this height is small, still there is a depth attached to it, and somewhere or the other at some infinite point, that there is a third vanishing point. But we are neglecting that factor for this kind of buildings which are too small. Clear? Sorry, we are neglecting that factor for these buildings which are too small, and now we are viewing 2-point perspective in some other way around, wherein both of our point lies over here, V1 and V2. There is no depth attached over here. Clear? It can happen the other way around as well, wherein we consider like, a building which is tall. Let's say something like this is what you want to, if you want to consider. So, and there is a small building, okay. Let's say. So over here also, this building which we are considering, we are neglecting the factor of the height that it might meet at some point. So that is what I am talking about. And this is how you can include a 2-point in a 3-point, but not, this is not absolutely correct, or this is not like, like how the thing, that rest. I hope in physics, that absolute rest or absolute, absolute rest is not possible. Everything in universe is moving. Something similar works over here. Clear? Any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay. So students watching this class in form of a recorded lecture, that's all for today's session. See you all in the upcoming class. Make sure if you have any doubts, you can connect us and clarify all your doubts and all your queries. If you need any help other than that as well, feel free to reach us over here at Design Teenage. Details mentioned in description. That's all. Thanks a lot. We are signing out for this session. See you all in the upcoming next session.